It's April 7th, and Patrick Lane has just dropped the second video in a series of he and I sailing from Panama around Cape Horn to Cape Town, South Africa. He does an excellent job of capturing the highs and lows of the second trip, which really starts in Port Williams, Chile, and finishes in Cape Town. If you haven't seen it, there's an encounter with icebergs. In fact, two different encounters with icebergs across there, which was kind of harrowing. But he referred in the descriptor of his video, he refers people over to my channel if they wanted to see the video podcast that I put out that discusses how I prepped the boat in anticipation of a 9,000 mile voyage that we undertook. And the first comment that came in from Jans, I don't want to butcher your last name, but the very first comment is a very fundamental, important question. It basically says, thank you for the valuable advice. Question, why did you not go for a Windvane solution as the backup rather than the more complicated classic autopilot? Less power hungry, less prone to mechanical failure? Question mark. So Jans, great. And as I replied in the thread there, I just thought it warranted its own video because it's really a fundamental and important question. Which I wanted to answer in more depth than just a couple of sentences. So, I'm a huge fan of Windvane self-steering devices on the back of boats, especially cruising boats. I had a monitor Windvane on two different boats. They actually happen to be race boats, which is uncommon to see Windvanes on those, although my racing was almost entirely single-handedly. So yeah, I'm a big fan, not opposed to them. But a couple of things that needed to be factored in. One, even though Aqualibra at 50 feet is a 15-ton net ton displacement boat, somewhere around 32,000 pounds, it is prone to surfing in high seas and high winds, which is an attribute I happen to like. Some cruising sailors would not like that. I do like it. The biggest issue with Windvanes on boats that are able to accelerate and surf is that when they do that, the apparent wind moves forward. So if you're on a broad reach, let's say 130, 140 degrees apparent wind angle, and you suddenly accelerate down the face of a wave, the apparent wind gets dragged forward to maybe 90, maybe even forward of 90. The wind vane, air vane, flops over, thinking that the wind has shifted, or that the boat has fallen off course, and it makes a correction. And it makes a correction to the left or the right, port starboard, depending on what angle you're sailing to. And of course, on a face of a wave, that's a disastrous thing, because as you're coming down the face of the wave at high speed, if the rudder is suddenly kicked over to the left, you suddenly are in a broach situation. So you have to dampen the air vane on a surfing boat in order to prevent the inadvertent sudden turn on the face of a wave, right? So they're not ideal from that point of view. Beating, reaching, close reaching, beam reaching, and broad reaching in lighter winds where you're not likely to surf, excellent, no problem. Great choice as a valid choice as a backup. But on a run or a deep broad reach where you are prone to accelerating, not such a great idea. So that's one consideration. Probably the single most important consideration, but also as a practical matter on Aqualibra, I got a swim platform on the back. It has a ladder that comes down, so kids, people in the water can come get in the boat. I've also got those heavy-duty davits because when we're cruising, we suspend the dinghy with an outboard, usually attached when we're island hopping, for instance, through the Caribbean. I opted to replace my rib, the rigid inflatable, with a fold-up job that we kept in the bow, actually, on this trip. Never used the dinghy. Because it's lighter and it is not left out in the sun. I leave the boat many months at a time, and with the rib, we ruined a $5,000 rib in just a couple of years because of the damage that happened to the sun. I could have had canvas chaps or something made for it, but I didn't. So on this, we figured, I want the option of being able to stow the dinghy down below deck. So we didn't have it on this trip. However, cruising, that's normally an issue. So that gets in the way of an air vane on a hydro vane or a monitor type wind vane. So those were the considerations. The swim platform is not ideal for a hydro vane or wind vane to be mounted on the back. The ladder makes it kind of needs to be offset. The davits, the whole thing, not great. And really, the other other practical kind of decision-making process was the Whitlock autopilot that's in the boat, that's original to the boat. Still a very strong pilot, although, as Patrick points out, we lost the use of that, although we considered it to be the backup to the Brooks and Gatehouse pilot because of the NMEA 0813 protocol wiring, all of that stuff, the Sea-Talk, wind instruments for Ramin, all that stuff went kaput because of the very high humidity or condensation issues that we had on the boat because the heater packed up. So the B&G we considered to be the primary autopilot. It was more modern. It had apparent wind angle that the autopilot could steer to, which is a very helpful and useful attribute. The Whitlock Raymarine was the original, but we considered it to be the backup, and we ultimately ended up losing it. So, Jan really makes a valid point that if you lose your electrical system, and we obviously did not, and Patrick points out that with the Watt and C and the 500 watts of solar panels, we had diversity of electrical generation. We also had an alternator on the engine if we needed it. We had more electrical generation than we actually needed for the trip, which was a nice luxury to have. But if you have a catastrophic electrical failure, then a mechanical pilot is a very nice backup to have. But with the practical considerations I just laid out, that's why I personally opted for two electric-driven autopilots as opposed to a Windvane in this particular situation. So, Jan, I hope that helps. You brought up a great question that I really, as I said, thought warranted and deserved a more in-depth explanation from me on it. I hope that helps, and if anybody has other questions as fundamental as the one Jan brought up around this autopilot selection, then I'm happy to jump on here and do a quick video if it warrants a more in-depth discussion. All right, hope that helps.